The founder of the Decolonization Foundation and former Director General of the Department of Labor, Mr. Jimmy Mayni, has approached the Public Protector's Office to probe allegations of corruption involving the National Treasury, and he wants the investigation to go as far as the Eskom procurement of Kusile for 100 billion rands more than was necessary. The allegations of corruption in Treasury by Mr. Manyi involve current and former Finance Minister Pravin, Gordhan, Nhlanhla, Nene, and Trevor Manuel. Manyi joins us on the show to discuss these allegations of corruption in Treasury, as well as to share his thoughts on the current state of the ANC and the goings-on in government. Mr. Manyi, pleasure to have you with us.
Okay, hi Tim and your viewers.
Well, very unusual, unprecedented that you just took it upon yourself and said, look, we must probe this thing. I'm reporting the ministers of finance. Well, why do you think they might be implicated, or there's a case for them to answer in this matter?
National Treasury runs a very efficient system. Now, if you have tenders that require National Treasury approval, and you then find that there is something that seems untoward, then National Treasury immediately becomes implicated. You must remember that National Treasury has got the constitutional competence and authority to compel people to comply with finance issues, people to make sure that everything is where it should be. They are the people that sign off on the guarantees and what have you. Now, in the Eskom case, for instance, in 2007, there are situations that are just unexplainable with the Kusile and Medupi power stations. Both these power stations, if you put their total wattage together, they push something to the order of some 10,000 megawatts. And at the time, the cost of building these power stations was something to the order of about $1 million US dollars per megawatt. And I put the numbers together with an exchange rate of about 10, just to round off things. The cost of these things should have been about 100 billion, yet the tender went out for 226 billion. So there's 100 billion plus that from where we sit.
What do you think might have happened here? I mean, obviously you've made the case. I'm asking the protector to investigate. What is it that you think might have been done?
This shows a price inflation, clearly.
Yeah.
This is a price inflation here. And I'm saying this is what it looks like from where I sit, and I'm asking for a probe. I just don't believe that such a thing can happen with such an efficient department. I think there's some artificial loading of the price here. And it's not the only thing. A couple of things are just not characteristic. Second thing that has happened is that as we sit here and now, an additional 83 billion that Eskom is again supposed to pay in terms of the delays, from this construction of these plants. And what's more peculiar about these delays is that typically in contracts like these, if the contractor delays, there are penalties that must accrue to the contractor. But in this case, it appears that the contract did not have that kind of a clause, or if it did have, that clause is not enforced. Whilst at the same time, Eskom itself, because it's delayed from commissioning these plants, other suppliers of Eskom, like Exaro, cable companies and others, have not stopped to exercise their own penalties on Eskom. So Eskom is hit on both sides. There's suppliers on the one side, where Telkom is paying billions of rands as we speak, yet Telkom is not enabled to recoup some of these.
Eskom, you mean?
Eskom, yes.
Right, yeah.
Eskom is not able to recoup some of these things from the contractor. So we think as the Decolonization Foundation that things are not where they should be, and the final accountability rests with National Treasury.
But here's an interesting thing. Treasury itself is saying that Eskom must account, actually. They're asking for all kinds of documents from them.
Eskom, this is another issue. This, what I call pseudo-activism of National Treasury, is about now. It's not about what we're talking about. It's about issues that, and by the way, Eskom has been to Parliament to explain themselves. Everything is above board. the chairman of Eskom has explained, the CEO of Eskom has explained, that is nothing. This is this kind of activism that should have been there during the Trevor Manuel's time, that we have not seen happening, that has allowed. By the way, this is not the only thing. Even if you go to Transnet, by the way, when during Ramos's time, Ramos signs away the life of Transnet to one company, an Anglo subsidiary, Kumba. What happens in this case, 2005, she signs a 20-year contract for the allocation of rail to transport iron ore to Saldanha. Now, in this case, 75% of the allocation gets allocated just to one company. So in other words, even if you are a emerging company trying to get the rail is spoken for the next, up to 2027, you can't get in there. What's more, she then says in that contract, in the event Eskom, Transnet builds more capacity, 85% of that new capacity again is given to this company. So Ramos has created a monopoly of note, as it were. And Trevor Manuel signed off on those things again, just before they got married and all this. So it was like a boyfriend-girlfriend arrangement, a very conflict situation which should not have been allowed to happen, but it happened. And I have reported these cases that something must be looked at. It didn't stop there. Ramos, before she goes to join ABSA, she then changes the contracts and removes all the penalty clauses in the contract. So as we speak here and now, that Kumba can just do as they please. There are no penalties in there, firstly. Secondly, she also removes the quality issues on the product. So in other words, what is being transported, the country doesn't actually know what is being transported because what is being exported, because the quality products, quality criteria have been removed. What that means is that the value of these things is now up in the air, so which gives space for corruption to happen. So in other words, you can then just declare the value of these things as you want, and so on, and therefore the fiscus will be robbed in terms of tax purposes and all that. So those are the cases.
I'm coming back to the point. I did not establish the Decolonization Foundation first because it's very important.
Yes.
We also established the credentials of the organization. You
Yes.
started this for what purpose and
Yes.
what is the organization all about?
The Decolonization Foundation, we have started because some of us in this foundation have come to a conclusion that this colonial economic system is not working. This colonial economic system continues to produce inequality, continues to produce unemployment, continues to produce black middle class that is one check away from poverty. So this thing is not working, and we've been nursing it for the past 22 years. It's just not, it's not working as it was. So for us, I mean, even if you look at government policies are designed to impoverish black people, especially national treasury policies like triple PFA. That law is actually unconstitutional in our view. It continues to impoverish black people. Even if you look at PFMA, there are two main issues on PFMA. PFMA incentivizes you to spend as much as you can, and de-emphasizes the efficiencies, de-emphasizes whether the objectives is achieved. If you go to Parliament to account, all they're interested in is you budgeted 100 million. Did you spend 100 million or not? If you can say I've spent 100 million, then everybody is okay, as it were, because we've done the expenditure. But then when you look at the rest of the equation as to who benefits, then you've got procurement policy, which says 80% of the points allocation must go to the lower price. And now white people, because they've been in business for so long, they've got economies of scale, they've got everything. So actually this goes to white people largely. And not only to white people, also international firms and all that. So you actually have a government system that is enabling the furtherance of the wealth of white people and international. A government system that ensures that black people continue to be impoverished, as it were. Well, so for us, as the Decolonization Foundation was saying, this is wrong, this must stop here and now, we need to find a new system.
Let's talk about the issues around the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan now, who's been investigated by the Hawks. And there are concerns by a whole number of commentators, economists, analysts, that this will threaten the country's economy. What's your view about that generally held view that the president must intervene and stop these investigations, and to put Pravin Gordhan, Minister of Finance, under such pressure is unreasonable and poses a risk?
Yeah, no, a couple of things. I think South Africans are very hypocritical. Firstly, they say the president must not, there must be no state interference in the arms of, in the government apparatus, as it were. There must be no political intervention. Now they're asking for a political intervention. The Hawks are an independent institution, and if even the minister cannot interfere. And this has been the criticism of the Scorpions in the past, that there's a lot of political interference with state apparatus. And now we've got the Hawks, which is with an independent act of parliament and are supposed to be independent, as it were. Now that they're independent, now people are asking for a political intervention. I think it's hypocritical in the first place. That's the first thing. The second thing, we've been led to believe, and that I believe this, that in South Africa, we have a very credible economic system. We have a very strong national treasury. We've got a very strong banking system. We've got a very strong reserve bank. All of these work in concert to ensure a very stable, both fiscal and monetary policy. These systems don't depend on individuals. I think it's actually quite silly to think that anything happening when a particular individual will collapse the system. It can't be.
Okay. And I'll go back to the earlier point you were making about Maria Ramos and her tenure at Transnet, and you also referred to Trevor Manuel as Minister of Finance. Do you suspect that there might have been some collusion somewhere?
Yes, without a doubt. No, without a doubt. I think it's quite peculiar that South Africans are not asking about this. In fact, in South Africa, I think we need to be very honest and treat everybody equally. I mean, from the beginning of a minister and a DG having an affair, that should have been an issue, but it was never an issue for South Africans because it's the right people, as it were. That should have been on its own a problem. But it's not been a problem for South Africans. That's the first thing. The next thing, we have a particular DG that when things happen, she goes then to be a CEO in financial institutions, all of those that have got a relationship with the National Treasury headed by somebody who has an affair with at the time, or boyfriend-girlfriend arrangement and all that. You know, all of these things. There's a lot of conflict embedded in the system, a lot of ethical issues, a lot of ethical questions that remain unanswered, yet South Africans, because it's other people, turn a blind eye. If it was somebody else in this thing, I'm telling you, hell would have broken loose. The DA would have been in court to argue conflict of interest and all of this.
Well, you're talking about the former Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel. He's been in the news now recently, for the past few days, lamenting state capture, and he believes that it's almost entrenched now, and that this threatens the stability of the state, and that certain action needs to be taken, and definitely blaming the president along the way for the state of affairs in the country, and that all of these issues that are in the public domain now threaten economic growth and the stability of the country. So earlier, he even suggested that the president should step aside.
Yeah, no, look, he must respond to all his pronouncements. The only thing I can say is that when you talk about state capture, I actually think that National Treasury is captured by big business in the first place. And I think also, particularly financial services, they've captured National Treasury. I think people like Trevor Manuel and them cannot be innocent of the depreciation of the rand in terms of the institutions they control, how they behave. You must remember that the future growth, which has precipitated the depreciation of the rand as we speak, which has begun some kind of a run of some sort from either asset managers, that future growth is wholly owned by Old Mutual, which Trevor Manuel is chairman of. So the connection is right there. And all because Trevor Manuel and them and Sipho Pityanas of this world, they have their own political battles that they are fighting and are using these institutions that they are controlling. as leverage to get their way. I think it's disingenuous.
Quick and final question on your part, a brief response from you. The president is paid 7.8 million rands towards Nkandla.
Yes.
Should the matter be laid to rest now and be left as is? Because as we speak, there would have been heated debates in Parliament. I've watched some of the commentary people saying this is not the end of the matter. They want to ask further questions. Where does the money come from? This, that, and the other. But what's your view anyway? The president has now paid that 7.8 million.
No, I think that should bury the matter now, because the main thing was that the public protector's report was that there was undue benefit. There was a proportion to be paid. And the Constitutional Court, by the way, the president has always been saying how much, and that answer has not been forthcoming. Other people suggested zero. Other people suggested all kinds of numbers. There has never been a clear answer to that question up until the Constitutional Court process. We now have the answer. We now have the number. And the president, as a man of honor, as a man of integrity, has risen to the occasion and has done the honorable thing. Following his apology to the nation, he has now paid. So therefore, in a country that purports to be 90% Christian, we should be moving forward. President has apologized. President has paid the money and all that. So unless we're satanic.
Well, but the president has said that's my final question, but your response has given rise to another one where people say, actually, you mentioned Sipho Pityana earlier on, former DG of Labour himself, and there was also a top official in the government, saying that, at the funeral of Reverend Arnold Stoffile, that if the president was there, he would have told him to resign, and is currently mobilizing different formations to ask the president to step
by
aside.
the way, the Decolonization Foundation is considering what sort of charges we need to lay to the Anglo Gold Ashanti chairman for this thing. This is a very serious issue. You can't have a chairman of such a big monopoly company doing the things that the chairman of Anglo Gold is doing. This is no different from a coup. In fact, the Decolonization Foundation is actually investigating as to what processes we need to be following. We'll be giving, in fact, today, we'll be giving a notice to Anglo Gold chairman himself and the shareholders about the potential probable coup that the actions of this chairman have got a tendency to do. They are laying the ground for a coup in this country. This is quite a serious thing. We're actually also looking at whole issues around the treason and all of this, economic terrorism and all of this. So all of these matters we are looking at as the Decolonization Foundation, but this is something that could precipitate a coup, and Anglo-American Gold Ashanti is at the center of this. It's quite a serious issue that the chairman has been doing.
You're talking about Sipho Pityana here?
Yes, this is the chairman of Anglo Gold Ashanti. This is a serious company. Don't look at this. This is the company, a very top company, huge equity. If a company like this is going to be involved, you said it yourself, mobilizing businesses at the back of saying the president must step down, that is unconstitutional. That could precipitate a coup. It's something that should be prosecutable. And for us as the Decolonization Foundation, we'll be dealing with that matter on those bases.
Mr. Jimmy Mayni, thank you very much for talking to us.
You're most welcome.
And that's the founder of the Decolonization Foundation, Mzwanele Manyi.
That's it.
We